Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 1, Episode 4. Based on the end of this episode with Lola, I believe I can say with confidence that is not the droid I'm looking for. This
Oh,
episode, I
poor
know
Lola.
Lola's had a bad time on this show.
Yeah, Lola's had a rough time.
We've got a lot to get into here. This was a very dramatic, action-packed episode. I think there's a lot to sort of think about in terms of where they are going from here.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of action. If you're really into the action of Star Wars, this was for you. Overall, it really was just a rescue mission to get us to this point with Lola at the end of the episode. So, did it move the story ahead enough for there only being like a handful of episodes this whole season? I don't know.
Well, go ahead, hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any other discussions that we've got coming up. We have reviews, of course, through the end of this season.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV.
Okay, the thing about this episode is just that, yeah, I did find myself craving a little bit more beyond just what we ended up getting. But I mean, that's no slight against what we ended up getting because this was probably like the most action packed, stealthy, exciting one that we've had this season so far.
Yeah, I think it's just that the first few episodes have got the bar really high when
Yeah.
it comes to expectations. And I think we all went into this episode kind of knowing that this was going to be a rescue mission
Yeah.
episode. And by the end of it, that we would see Obi-Wan being able to rescue Princess Leia. And I mean, it paid off. There was lots of really good action. There was a couple of things that I was kind of like, okay, this is a little weird. Like, we had Tala go in and they're like questioning her, and she's,
Yeah.
she's a higher up commander here, and she's getting questioned. What are you doing here? This isn't your
Yeah.
station. But then later we can watch Obi-Wan with a giant jacket having Leia under there like a reverse Vincent adult man from BoJack Horseman, where it's very obvious something weird is going on with this guy, but nobody's noticing. I was just like, what is happening here?
I am increasingly convinced that I don't know if Darth Vader needs to go to like a job fair or something like that to recruit new people, but a lot of people working under him kind of suck. I mean, we've already talked about the stormtroopers and their real inability to do just about anything. And then you have the other, supposed high-ranking officers of this fortress who sort of look at Tala and they kind of go through different extremes. We get the guy early on that's just like, no, 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 you need to come with me. You need to, and then he does all this, and then she kind of like fires back at him, and he's just like, okay. And then he just walks away.
Yeah, and then later she's at the station, she's guiding Obi-Wan through the fortress, and then another person comes up and is like, we need to talk, I don't know why you're here. It's just with so much focus on her that they're gonna really sort of give her the gears, and
Yeah.
Obi-Wan's gonna walk out with this oversized jacket with Leia just walking beside him and nobody notices. Do 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 do. It's like, no, no.
I I tried to have a count of how many stormtroopers got owned in this episode because this is my new favorite thing. I was doing a pretty good job until like, we saw Obi-Wan use the Force to bring in all of them. Then I was like, okay, at this point I lose. There's too many stormtroopers in there.
Okay, the thing that I really did like about this episode is that we saw Obi-Wan really leaning into the Force again. He was really sort of questioning himself. We've seen a lot of self-reflection, a lot of guilt. He
Yeah.
he just is, he's really rusty. It's been a while, and we got to I didn't know how they were going to show it, if we were going to get some sort of like Rocky montage of him like, using the Force and getting back into it, but I like the way that they did it, where he had the motivation and the motivation was strong enough, which is saving Princess Leia, to be able to sort of hold the water as much as he can through the window until, he can't any longer. It felt good to see him pushing himself past, this sort of blockage that he has with himself.
It's a very important character moment to sort of better understand, okay, this is where he was, this is where he's going. We already saw, Vader basically taunt him earlier this season and sort of doing his, I'm better than you, old man kind of rant. And it's like, here is Obi-Wan. He's getting it together. I mean, I will give this guy a lot of credit based on where he was at the start of this episode when he was doing his own version of the Darth Vader dunk baths. And then like later on, he's just like swimming his way into the fortress. I will admit that seemed like a pretty quick turnaround and a recovery here.
Yeah, it was, but I'm willing to let that go because it was really cool watching him swim under the water to get into the fortress. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I was kind of like, wow, he got better real fast.
I mean, the biggest selling point of this show continues to just be that Obi-Wan is awesome. Ewan McGregor, also awesome. It's good to sort of have like an old-fashioned hero that is just willing to do whatever it takes for this singular mission. And there's not like any real moral ambiguity with him. It's like, you know where he is, you know where he stands, you know what he's trying to achieve. Sometimes it's good to just sort of turn that part of your brain off where you kind of question if you can trust somebody, which you do on like 80% of all shows these days.
But the real hero of this episode is Wade. And for those of you who don't know who Wade is, you're not alone. There was like this huge moment at the end of this episode where we were mourning this red shirt Wade, where I was, she's sad, he's sad, we're pouring one out for him, we're drinking for him. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he was in it for like a second. They spent a very long time for poor Wade that none of us knew.
I guess this is the time of this video where we have to pour one out for Wade. Wade, you a real one. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes mourning your loss. No, we're not. We're not. Wade, goodbye. I don't know what else to say about that. It's like, I understand that they have to show the aftermath of Wade's death where, of course, Tala is instructing everybody, all right, you guys are all soldiers now. You're all a full part of this. Sure, I get that. I understand that. Can we move a little bit faster to the stuff with Reva on the other side of it? Because, yeah, that's kind of the big part of this that really matters.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the stuff with Reva and Princess Leia.
Yeah.
Like the back and forth between the two of them where neither of them was going to get one on over the other one. Of course, obviously, Reva did end up because she was able to put the tracker in Lola. But, I mean, that's going to end up possibly really biting her in the butt as well. I mean, Vader was like, listen, you really screwed up. They got away. And she's like, no, I put a tracker. And so everything's going to be okay. Wherever that tracker is, Obi-Wan will be. To a certain time limit. Because, I mean, the idea is that Obi-Wan is bringing her back home. So once she's back home, a tracker's no longer with him anymore. And that is the mission for Obi-Wan. So there is a time limit on this because the minute that she's home, Obi-Wan's lost.
Reva just has to be lucky that Vader didn't take her out here because, like, there were so many reasons he could have just, like, pointed the finger at her and been like, you the problem, you gotta go. Yeah, sure. You made up for it a little bit by having the foresight to know that, okay, maybe I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to go ahead and plant this bug on Lola. It's like, all right, I understand all of that. I mean, yeah, the interaction with Reva and Leia was great. I mean, Leia's a million times braver than I am, by the way. Like, in that moment, the moment they cart me into that room and there's those machines around me, I'm flopping like a fish. Like, there's no way I'm getting out of that without confessing to anything.
No, the back and forth between the two of them was really good. It was a 10 out of 10. Watching them both use different types of manipulation, whether it's tears or trying to, like, emotionally connect with them, fear, bravery. Like, they both ran the gamut of, like, here's everything I've got in my arsenal against you. I'm going to use it all. And they both did. And it felt good to watch those scenes. They were the best part of this episode for me.
I know that there's a lot of people out there who think that, okay, maybe Reva is, one of the kids that we saw amidst the chaos at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And the way that she was sort of talking to Leia and sort of saying, I've lost a lot, and sort of talking about her own sort of origin story, like what little bit we got. Like, I could see that happening. Like, I could see that being a part of who she was and what inspired her to go this route. Now, if this is the case, if these theories are true, why not give us something in the final 2 episodes? Because it's like, other than Reva and Tala, it's just like, we know where everybody else is ending up. We know Vader's not going to die. We know Obi-Wan's not going to die. We know what happens to Princess Leia. So it's just like, I wish we would get a little bit more on one of these other kind of characters, just so we can have a little bit more of suspense, kind of like with, Kim Wexler on Better Call Saul, which we also cover.
Yeah, it's that's a really good comparison because it is. I remember when Better Call Saul was going to be coming out, and everyone was kind of like, "Well, we all know where he ends up. Like he's going to be, spoiler alert, working at a Cinnabon, in the future as Gene," and that it's sort of like, okay, we know where it ends up, so what story do you have to tell with this journey? And it ended up being really solid, and it is a difficult task to cover characters where you know where their journey ends already, but I mean, I think overall they're doing a really good job with this.
I hope that at least either Reva or Tala survives this season, just so that we can have kind of a larger story arc with one of them, where maybe we can chart out in some sort of unexplored direction. Because it feels like a lot of episode 5 at this point is going to be kind of like what you set up earlier. They're going to use that limited amount of time they have to try to track down Obi-Wan. The Empire will really get things going. And I think, of course, obviously, we're building towards another sort of Obi-Wan versus Vader showdown, which I'm guessing is going to come in the finale.
For sure. And I think we saw a lot in this episode as well of the connection that is growing between Princess Leia and Obi-Wan. And we know how important that connection is later on in, the series of Star Wars. And we saw a lot of that building this, where she thought Obi-Wan was dead and how much that broke her. And then when she found out that he's alive, and that little handhold at the end, I'm like, okay, this was really good. This is a good part of the journey to watch this build.
All right, it's time for my biggest beef with this episode. As much fun as a lot of it was.
Vincent Adult Man.
That just made me laugh. Anytime you can give me a memory of Vincent Adult Man, which is one of the most ridiculous gags that I, for some reason, love, like, I'm usually for it, even though, yes, it was incredibly unrealistic that nobody would buy that. But that's really connected to a lot of my beef here, is just that I typically have like a cap of like, I can understand like a couple of coincidences sort of happening in an episode. It's TV. They want to make things dramatic. Of course, we're going to see, the plane show up at just the right moment so that Obi-Wan and Leia can escape. But it felt like there were about 4 or 5 like really, really close calls and near misses where if like one thing went differently, Obi-Wan would be dead. It's sort of like, you got to play the odds here at a certain point. Like, this would basically just be like going to a card table and just like winning with near impossible odds almost every single game, where at a certain point you're going to be like, I'm going to walk away. I'm not crazy. I'm going to lose my money if I keep going with this for a while. I know this is like my old man rant here, and everybody's just probably like, it's the story, just deal with it. But I said it, and I mean it.
No, I agree. I mean, as fans of the franchise in general, I mean, you guys are all fans too. I mean, if fans aren't going to keep a property accountable, then like, who is? Like, we have to be there to be like, okay, this really worked.
Yeah.
Or this is too many coincidences and it's just not working. You guys need to kind of retool this a little bit.
Yeah, and if there were a couple of things that were a little bit easier for Obi-Wan and Leia to get through in this episode, that would have been fine. Not everything needs to be just like by the skin of their teeth, they make it through. I mean, don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed a lot of this. It's just great to get like some Star Wars action back on TV again, especially at the time when there's not like, some big budget movie that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of really good TV in general coming up this summer. I mean, Animal Kingdom is starting up soon. Only Murders in the Building is coming up. Better Call Saul's coming back. House of the Dragon. I mean, for a lot of us nerds out there, there's a lot of we eating good.
Yeah, we're eating good. We're covering
Andor, that's coming up as well.
We're gonna have our hands full tackling a lot of this sort of stuff, and I'm really excited for the summer to come. So hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss any of that. Follow us on Instagram at MattandJessTV, and we'll see you here next time.